Okay, welcome. Good evening. This is Bishop Brian Mackey, and I'm very glad to have you participating in this class, Music Appreciation, MUMS 105G. And I'd like to begin, if I could, very quickly with a word of prayer, and then we'll get started. Gracious Heavenly Father, we thank you so much for today. God, we ask that you would be with us over these next several weeks as we study the gift of music. Lord, the beautiful and wonderful gift that it is. Ask that you would guide us in our time together in our studies and draw us closer to you. We ask in Jesus' name. Amen. So, what I'd like to do sort of first is just give a brief, I guess, introduction of myself. And first off, I'll just offer the fact that no, there are not two people named Ryan Mackey in this class. For whatever reason, I'm having a little bit of an issue, if you're watching the video, having a little bit of an issue with the video setup. So I have to log in twice in order to make it work. So there's that part of it. Second thing is I don't typically use a webcam just because of the nature of using videos and audio files and the PowerPoint. I try and reduce the load on my computer. And so I apologize if you are used to looking at your professor while you're in the class. So that's just something that I do. If you really need to see my face, it's there in the one that's labeled Ryan Mackey. That's more or less what I look like. My beard's a lot shorter right now. So, all right. That being said, I would like to kick off with a introductory lecture on music, on introducing our current topic here, and I kind of have to jump around a little bit in order to get this going. It'll come up in just a moment. As my father would say, this is not good radio, having blank space here. But we kind of go on and wait for the technology to catch up. So it looks like it's almost there. All right, there we go. So this is an introductory lecture course. So usually how this goes for me is I actually teach at Central in Hutch. Sorry, that's a different town around here. I teach at Central here in McPherson. My official title is Lecturer of Music History and Technology. So my main areas of academic teaching and research at Central are everything from the oldest musics, so music dating back to biblical times, all the way through to the modern music, the contemporary stuff, with a lot of music professors out there. What I try and explain is that if you're a musicologist like myself and you teach these musicology courses, you usually have kind of twofold to your position, especially when you work at a small school. You are usually both a generalist, meaning that you teach all eras of music history. And then most of us tend to have a specialty. As I went through graduate school in my, my five music history classes, I had 4 professors, and I had a classicist, a romanticist, a 20th century professor, and then a medievalist. And I personally am a 21st or 20th and 21st century. That's my wheelhouse, and I mainly focus on electronic music, whether it be the older style stuff that we'll learn about later on in week 5, or whether it be, or week 4, or whether it be the even the popular electronic dance music. I compose in a wide variety of genres. The other thing I would just mention briefly is as to some of just my own stuff. I am a ordained bishop in a little denomination called the Communion of Evangelical Episcopal Churches. It's been my privilege to serve there for just over, this year makes 11 years I've been ordained as clergy, and just over a year now as a bishop. And it's been a real honor and joy to be able to serve the church in that capacity. So I might wax a little theological at times. That's just kind of who I am and how I roll. So now one of the big life lessons I've learned actually came from a mentor of mine who I had 2 main mentors when I was in college. One was the campus pastor at one of the places I did my undergrad at, and the other was the choir director at the same school. Choir director's name was Dr. Alan Gum. He currently teaches at the University of Central Michigan, or Central Michigan University. And he believed that anybody could sing. He, as the choir director and as the voice teacher, he always wanted people to be involved in singing, and he'd recruit, and people would be like, oh, well, I can't do that. I can't sing. And Dr. Gum would look at him, and with that very kind face of his, he would say, you can sing. Anybody can sing. And so he would really try to work with people and get them involved in music, because he knew the power of music and its ability to influence and develop people. So as I did some research into, or when I began my research for my master's thesis, one of the key things that I developed in one section of my thesis is this idea of inherent musicality. I believe, as a Christian, I believe that we are all made in the image and likeness of God. This is based out of the narrative, the creation narrative in Genesis. And being made in the image and likeness of God, I also believe that we are creative beings. I think that we have it in our nature to want to create, whether it means works of visual art, of music, cooking, or telling stories, or dancing, or any number of things. I believe that it all factors into being a creative individual, being made in the image and likeness of God. So one of the videos that really proved this point to me is this video I'm going to show now, which features musician, composer, conductor by the name of Bobby McFerrin. Now, you may know Bobby from a song that he had a little bit of a hit with back in the 80s called Don't Worry, Be Happy. That was like one of the best things that happened to his career and one of the worst things that happened to his career, because from then on, a lot of people just associated Mr. McFerrin with that song. And he's so much better and greater and more amazing musician than just that song. So Mr. McFerrin has done compositions and workshops and directed ensembles and so on all around the world. And I caught this video about 3 or 4 years ago, I think it's been now, in which he was part of a panel talking about the way that the mind works. And so I'd like to share that with you now. So this is based off of a particular scale that we use in music quite frequently. It's called the pentatonic scale. And so this video is called The Power of the Pentatonic Scale.
talking about expectations? Expectations. Watch. Ba, ba. Ba, 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 ba. Okay. Interesting to me about that is, regardless of where I am, anywhere, every audience gets that.
So what Mr. McFerrin is showing there is, and maybe you caught the title up there, it's notes and neurons. So there's this way that our brains are built to where we already have some of this in us, or we've been exposed to it enough to where it's familiar. And I want to suggest that that is part of what it is to be inherently musical, or to have an inherent musicality. And it's something that I would say is within us all. Whether you consider yourself to be musical or not, I do think that that ability is in there, if nothing else, because you've been made in the image and likeness of God. Now, so the question comes up oftentimes as to why we would even want to learn about music, or what would be the rationale behind even a music class. And I talk a little bit about this in the opening announcement, and I even have a little video link to it, which I'd encourage you to watch. My couple points is that I would say that music, along with a lot of the other arts, makes life more interesting. If I wasn't teaching music, and when I wasn't teaching music, there was still music around me quite a bit. I worked restaurants for for a number of years, about six or so years total, between just a couple odd jobs here, and then I spent a good chunk of 5 years or so working at a restaurant here in McPherson before I started teaching full time, and also while I was studying for the priesthood. And so we had music going on all the time. There's music in the back when the dishwasher was working, and when the baker was there early in the morning. There was music out in the dining hall area. You know, you go to Walmart, you go to the grocery store, you go to Walgreens or CVS, you go to a car dealership, for goodness sake, you go to a mall, and it seems like there's constantly music around. It's almost kind of like having a soundtrack or a score like in a movie with you wherever you go. So it can definitely make life more interesting and add a dimension to it. Now, I often think it's interesting when people say that they're really not into music, and that's okay. You know, it's kind of different strokes for different folks. And again, I can appreciate the fact that this is not the program that you all are in is not to get a music degree. I totally understand it. However, I would say that life is probably a little more full with the addition of music, just like it would be with art, just like it would be like when I was in undergraduate school, when I was getting my bachelor's degree, I had to take a few mathematics courses and a couple science courses and things like that. And I'll never forget my band director and musicology professor. He had a pretty dry sense of humor, and I remember very clearly in conducting class, he looked at us and said, "Musicians only need to know how to count up to 4." And almost immediately, my sister-in-law, who was in the class with me, looked at him and said, "Well, what do you do if you have to count higher than 4?" And he's like, "Oh, you just subdivide, and then you can either be 1, 2, 3, or 4." So he's like, "You can do it 5/4 time. You can count it 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. You can do 7/4 time, and you can count it 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3." He's like, "You can subdivide anything by 4." And we weren't going to try and argue with him. But that idea of music being part of who we are as human beings, and what a key part of the human experience, whether you're talking about everyday life, whether you're talking about the different entertainment maybe that we engage with, or the different places that we go, it seems like music is often there. So music is obviously going to be used for a lot of different purposes. One of the most obvious ways is for some kind of social interaction. I grew up in a pretty conservative home, and a conservative, very conservative private school. And so we didn't dance. We weren't allowed to have dances at school. But my parents, when we'd go to weddings, they thought that the dancing was fun. And then as I graduated high school, went out, my wife and I would go to dances and things like that. So you've got that social aspect. As mentioned before, there's kind of this sonic background. And I think that that's been a good thing, but I also think that idea of there being music in practically all places, or in many places, I think can be a little bit of a detriment at times. And we'll get into that. I think it's in week 4 or week 5 with some of the works and writings of a guy by the name of John Cage, and what music or what sound maybe is about. Certainly to encourage a sense of unity within a group. There's great stories that have come out of the last 100 years of world history, in which music has been used to rally a group of people. If you want to read behind one of my favorite stories, it's what's called the Estonian Singing Revolution. And so in the communist era, in Russia, the former Soviet Union, there was a threat against the people of Estonia, and there was rumors that tanks were going to start rolling in to the country of Estonia, and they were going to be taken over and be occupied by the Soviets. And so tens of thousands of people gathered in the main city and some of the main cities, and they began to sing, and they sang their national songs, they sang their folk songs, they sang any number of things, and it unified them in heart, mind, and spirit. And when the communists got wind of this, they realized they, I guess, sent some spies or something like that into Estonia to kind of get the lay of the land. And when they saw these people united in heart and mind in their national identity, basically saying, we're not going to quit. You cannot do this to us. We will fight. They realized that they could not win because of the way in which these people were already, without having to pick up a gun, without having to get into a fighter jet or a tank, that these people were already unified and rallied and ready to take on any opposition. The fourth bullet point, obviously, as a clergyman, as a bishop, that one means a lot to me. The idea of expressing religious feelings. Now, it's not just limited to Christianity. However, my experience as a Christian would lean toward that direction. And I will say that I have been very fortunate, very blessed to sit in religious worship gatherings, again, primarily Christian gatherings, in different places around the world. I've gotten to worship with some Jewish brothers, both here in the United States as well as in Israel. And it's just been phenomenal to see how people express themselves to God and express their worship of God through music. I've been down south in Florida. I've been up north in Montana. I've been just here, there, a lot of places. Here in about 6 weeks, 5 weeks, I get to fly to Vatican City, and I get to take place in an ecumenical international worship gathering that is being co-hosted by Pope Francis. And so I'm really looking forward to hearing some of the musical expressions that are brought in as people from around the world come together to worship God on Pentecost Sunday. I think it's going to be really awesome. So, yeah, again, there's just all sorts of different musical expressions we as Christians can engage in. And finally, for psychological satisfaction, one of the things I've noticed over the last couple of years is if you use a streaming music service, whether it's like Spotify or Amazon Music, I know that does this as well, is that you can select your music, a playlist, according to a mood now. So it used to be, you know, you'd find this artist, you'd find this song, you'd find this album. Then it was by genre. So, you know, you'd have your easy listening, your country, your hip hop, your electronic music, your jazz, your rock, heavy metal, whatever. Now you can get it by mood. And so I'm going to open up my Amazon Music list here real quick, and I will tell you the playlist that I have. So I currently have 4 playlists on my phone through my Amazon Music account. One is called Driving at Night, one is called Electronic for Reading, and another one is called Evening Electronic. Again, I'm a fan and work a lot in electronic music. And so sometimes I've got one somewhere here on my computer that's called my Rainy Day playlist. And judging by the clouds gathering outside, I might click that one on this evening because it looks like it's about to rain like they forecasted. So we start to choose music then maybe by psychological satisfaction. Sometimes we listen to certain types of music, like if you go to the gym, or if you're in a social setting, you know, if you're having a dance party or if you're having a dinner party. Any number of things. There's all different types of music then that can be utilized for various events that can bring about psychological or emotional feeling or sensation. So on the topic of differentiating between different types of music, there's 2 main kind of factions that I like us to keep in mind as we're going in between music. And the first is what we'll call concert music. Now with concert music, this is music that is created primarily, not always, but primarily for listening. So the music that you would typically hear in concert halls, that is played by orchestras or sung by choirs of many different types. This is what we would typically call concert music. A lot of people would refer to it as classical music, which, as we'll see throughout the duration of this course, is not the best term to use. Instead, I would prefer or suggest that we use the terms concert music or formal music, something to that effect. Concert music is probably the better term. One of the main things with concert music is that it has to be interesting for people to listen to, or else they'll ignore it. And what I mean by interesting is that it doesn't need to be easy to listen to. Instead, it could be just something that's unique, something that's a little bit out there in terms of its overall musical effect. Now, I will say that at the same time, not only does it have to be interesting, but it also should be satisfying. There's a reason why people like music from the Baroque era and the classical era, because there's a sense of finality to it, the way that they end. There's a reason why with a lot of hymns that they have some kind of a specific ending, or if you flip through a hymnal, sometimes you'll see an amen that's added to the end. Maybe you grew up singing hymns and you're used to the tribe in which I was raised, the Disciples of Christ. We sang hymns. That was our main avenue of musical worship, and a large number of the hymns that we sang had an amen at the end, and it really gives a sense of finality to the music. So again, this idea of concert music has to be both interesting and satisfying. It can't just be blasé. Now, along with that, we'll discover some things about concert music that will hopefully make it a little bit more of interest to you. So, to differentiate between what I would call ordinary versus extraordinary. Ordinary music would be, here today, gone tomorrow. There's this term that's been used for several decades now, that of the one-hit wonder. And the one-hit wonder are those that have, they would have one decently known song, probably would make the top 40 on popular radio, and then that would be the only thing that they would really be known for. It's something that you saw in the 1950s and 60s. It's something that you saw through the 70s. The 80s was a huge era of popular music, one-hit wonders. And then even up until the present day, we still have a lot of that. Back in the 90s, I think it was the late 90s or early 2000s, Tom Hanks famously wrote, directed, and also starred in a movie called That Thing You Do, which focuses on a fictional band from Pennsylvania in the early 1960s, right around the era of the Beatles. And they're called the Wonders. And they have this one hit, and they skyrocket to stardom, and then the band falls apart. And near the end of the movie, Tom Hanks makes the comment of, you are the Wonders, the one-hit wonders. And that idea of sometimes they only get the one shot. It's here today, gone tomorrow. There's a lot of popular music that's like that. Now, then there's the extraordinary, that which is here today and remains tomorrow. Now, I will say that this isn't just a concert music phenomena, the idea of ordinary versus extraordinary. I do think that there's some pop music that would fall into this category. There's certainly a lot of jazz music that would fall into this category. There's a reason why, for example, my wife told me right before I came into class tonight that Sir Paul McCartney is going to be playing about an hour away from where we live. And my dad is a major Beatles fan. He's actually seen both Paul as well as Ringo Starr in concert in the last few years. And she said, I wouldn't mind going if he plays more of the early Beatles stuff, so early 1960s. And that's kind of the era of Beatles stuff that my wife likes. And I thought to myself, well, no, that's interesting that she would still really enjoy hearing these songs that are over 50 years old in some cases, pushing 55 years old. On the other side of the coin, there's the concert music side. And there is what I would say is ordinary concert music. There's so much music out there that has not been published, that has not been listened to by the public, that it just kind of, it boggles the mind. Historians are still, musicologists are still finding new bits and pieces of music all around the world. And so it's something that we need to be very aware of. At the same time, there's a reason why we're still listening to the works of Beethoven 190 years after he died. Beethoven died in 1827. This is the year 2017. So in 10 years, we'll celebrate the 200th anniversary of the death of Beethoven. There's a reason why we're still listening to and performing Mozart's music and Haydn's music and Handel's music and Bach's music and all these people going back to the 11th century and even beyond. Some of the music that's still quite popular, maybe not in the radio stations that you listen to or the playlists that you frequent on some of these media outlets, but there's music that is 1,500 years old, still being actively used and performed around the world. And that's some of the stuff that we want to get into in terms of extraordinary versus ordinary, something that's here today and will be here tomorrow as well. So one of the big things that I try and stress in this class is actually the words that were given to me 19 years ago when in the spring of 1998, I took music appreciation as a freshman here at Central Christian College. My music appreciation professor very straightforwardly told the class, it is not my job nor my goal to get you to like all types and genres of music. It is my goal, my job, to teach you how this music is made, the people who are responsible for this music, so that you can gain a greater appreciation for this music. So I did not really care for or understand country music. I listened to it a little bit when I was a kid because my mom's sister, my aunt, was really into country music, like the older school stuff, Hank Williams Sr. and some of the Patsy Cline and some of the older stuff. And I got turned off against it when I was in high school. And then I started dating a gal who not only liked country music, but was from the country, or who not only was from the country, but liked country music. And we dated, and I started listening to a little bit of country music and a little bit more and a little bit more. And then we got married, and I've been listening to country music ever since and enjoy it. On the flip side, my wife, when we met, I was into electronic music, which I still do quite a bit. That's a large part of what I do. And she wasn't too into it. Now she actually helps me to assess my compositions and is one of my biggest fans of my electronic music. So the idea of being able to open up to different types of music. Now, I'm not saying that you have to go off and listen exclusively to this type of music, but it's not a bad practice. One thing I've started doing just within the last 2 weeks, I have a list of the albums that I've been listening to, and I just will listen to whole albums, even if it's stuff that I've never listened to before. And so just looking at over my list, I've listened to everything from folk rock to electronic to hip hop to romantic era, 20th century. I've listened to some jazz. I've listened to some choir music, some choral music, impressionism, and a little bit in between. So it's been a lot of fun to get to do that. So one of the other things I want to do here actually, and I need to jump out of this, I will add that I'm not sure if I said this earlier, but I'm going to say it now. I actually teach 2 online courses on Tuesday evenings. And so I have to stop at approximately 6:45 so that I can prepare for the second course. So I will be ending this before too horribly long. The other big thing that you're going to focus on this week, there's kind of 3 parts. There's the ideas of understanding what it is to have music around you, be focused on that. Second thing is the elements of music. And then third thing would be the instruments, the various instruments. And I'll let you do that one a little bit more on your own. But in the next 10 minutes, 10, 12 minutes, I'm going to make a running start at the elements of music, because this is going to be really key for your next 6 weeks in this course as you're listening to and discerning music. So here I go. And you can always follow up with me on this later. Hopefully this is going to launch in. Okay. So in terms of the breakdown of the elements, there are, I would suggest that there's 4 major categories of elements, and these will be repeated on the intervening slides, on the following slides. So there's rhythmic, harmonic, aesthetic, and then organization. So when we talk about rhythmic elements, these are the main 4 things that we're looking at: beat, meter, tempo, polyrhythm. And I will give you a quick kind of rundown on these. So rhythm is an umbrella term. It's kind of, sometimes it's a difficult term for people to fully grasp. So it contains the beat, it contains the meter, it contains a tempo, and then a polyrhythm. So when we talk about rhythm, we talk about the flow of music through time. All music takes place in time. Even if music, specific music doesn't seem like it has a tempo or something else, that's the idea, is that it has to take place in time because we exist in time. We are temporal beings. We exist in what is called chronos time, or chronological time. Like yesterday was Monday, today's Tuesday, tomorrow is Wednesday. An hour ago it was 5:37 Central Standard or Central Daylight Time. Now it's 6:37. So all music takes place in time. And so that's one of the things I struggle with about being a composer or musician, is because my wife's cousin, who's an artist, people can walk up and look at a piece of her art, and they can kind of take the whole thing in. Yes, they can take, you know, a couple minutes with it. Most people don't take very long, even in looking at a piece of art. And then they move on. You know, if somebody's going to take time with one of my compositions, I expect them to at least listen to the whole thing. So I am going to ask for 3, 4, 5, 7, 10 minutes of their time. And sometimes people just don't have the patience for it. But it's a time art. So when we talk about the beat, if you're trying to identify the beat, and keep in mind that just because a song has a beat does not mean that it has drums in it. That's a misnomer. When we talk about how strong the beat is, or the pulse, think about what you would dance to or march to, or what you would walk to, like if you're out exercising or something like that. So beats are usually the way that music is measured, and it's usually something pretty steady. So if I've got my acoustic guitar down now, so if I was strumming something, I'll just do something pretty simple. So bum, 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 bum. So pretty steady beat right there. And you can sense it, even though there's no drums going on. So again, think about like the pulse of the music. Now, in terms of the notation of rhythm, and this isn't a music theory class, so you don't have to know all those notes and rests and so on and so forth. I just wanted you to see that. That image is off of Wikipedia if you're interested. But notes last for a certain number of portions of beats, and they're done in the ratio of 2 to 1. So you can see down there we start with a whole, and you know, half of a whole is obviously a half, half of a half is a quarter to an eighth, 16th, and you can see it goes all the way down to a 256th note, or in the British system, what is known as a demi, semi, hemi, demi, semi quaver, which is one of my favorite musical terms, right next to something that's called a proslambanomenos. All these great musical terms. Okay, so that's the notation of rhythm. So meter's the pattern of beats, not the notes themselves, so the pattern of beats. And this pattern is we're trying to find what is consistent. So if I were to play something like in 4/4 time, and I'm going to use the examples there at the bottom. I do have audio clips linked up to this, but just for the sake of time, I'm just going to play. So there's what's called 4/4 time, and 4/4 time is so common that it's often called common time, or it's just shown with the letter C, capital C. So you find it in rock, you find it in blues, you find it in a wide variety of musics. So I'll just give you something real quick in 4. So. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Pretty straightforward. 2, 3, 4, like that. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now 3/4 time is what we would typically associate with a dance called the waltz. And so it's groupings of 3 beats. So it's 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So let me give you a little waltz, a little 3/4. This is pretty standard waltz. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1. 6/8 time has a little bit more of a lilt to it. You hear this a lot in Irish music, and then sometimes in like rock, country. A lot of there's quite a few praise and worship songs out there that'll use it too. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So on and so forth. 5/4. So it's a grouping of 5. Should be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There we go. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's the opening of a famous jazz piece called Take 5 by the Dave Brubeck Quartet. I'm going to jump here a little bit. Tempo, quite simply put, tempo is the speed of those beats. Again, it's not the notes, because you can have notes that are shorter, you can have notes that are longer, but the tempo can be faster or shorter. So, for example, you could use a metronome or a metronome app online, and you can get something that's a little bit faster. So like here I'll do, so this is 1 beat per second, or 60 beats per minute. This would be an adagio tempo, maybe even a largo. Here's 2 beats per second, 120 beats per minute. This is where a lot of house music, dance music, disco sits at, and so on and so forth. That'd be a moderato to an allegro, a little bit faster. Most of these terms are in Italian, either marketed in Italian or in English-speaking compositions, they would just mark them. Let's see, I'm going to move on to harmonic, and this will probably be where I will end for today. I can post up some videos on through an announcement or through an email, so do look for both as to elements of music and understanding them. But for harmonic, let me kind of go through these. So the sorry, I'm writing and trying to talk at the same time. In terms of pitch, so pitch is the highness or lowness of sound. So something that's very high, something that's lower. You can hear how far apart, how diverse they are. If I was taking you very scientific, and I do this in my intro to music technology classes, we would talk about, excuse me, the number of vibrations of the molecules in the air, and how higher pitch sounds like this one vibrate faster through the air versus lower pitch ones like this are lower, have longer waveforms, and take time. They're a little bit slower. So when we talk about having a range of pitches then in a song, are there a wide range of pitches like this? Or is it pretty narrow? Most of this is just 5 notes. So it's pretty narrow in terms of its pitch range. So scales. Scales are a series of notes that go pitch-wise, or excuse me, a series of pitches that go stepwise, in which they're kind of thought of as the skeleton. So here I'll play a G major scale for you here real quick. So you can start to build melodies out of that. And then there's minor scales as well. Again, I'll try and get some supplemental stuff to you. One of the important things about melody is it's this idea that it's a series of pitches that go together, that are cohesive. So if I just played random pitches, those don't necessarily go together. But if I played something like, let's or like those go together. Those make a melody. Those are pretty cohesive. Let's see. Okay, we're probably going to have to continue the rest of this offline, just because I'm looking at time and realizing that I start my next class in 13 minutes and I've got to log off and get everything set up through the Zoom on that. So if you have questions, please do message me or watch this video again. Follow along with some of the supplemental materials. I have a note here to myself to set up something that would have some additional resources for you. So I appreciate your patience as I'm figuring this out on how to teach 2 classes in the same evening. It's a first for me, so I thank you in advance for your patience as I walk through this. So Ryan.Mackey, M-A-C-K-E-Y, R-Y-A-N period M-A-C-K-E-Y at centralchristian.edu for questions. Otherwise, I hope that you have a great week, a blessed week, and enjoy the first stages of this journey with music. God bless you all, and have a good one.